Do you ever feel like the best years are behind you? Like the energy you once had? The spark, the sheer joy of waking up and facing the day has just faded away. Maybe you look in the mirror and see someone you barely recognize. Someone who feels heavier, slower, just less. I know exactly how that feels. Not too long ago. When I turned 63, I hit a wall I didn't think I could climb over. I felt tired all the time. My joints ached. My mind felt foggy. And honestly, I just felt a deep sense of hopelessness settling in. It was more than just feeling old. It was feeling irrelevant, like I was just waiting for time to pass. Days felt long and empty. Things I used to love doing felt like too much effort. Getting out of bed felt like a monumental task sometimes. It was a really low point, lower than I'd ever expected to reach. But then, something shifted. It wasn't a miracle cure or a magic pill. It was something surprisingly simple, things I'd overlooked for years, things that, when I finally tried them, started to peel back the layers of that hopelessness. Day by day, in this video, I want to share the journey I took, the practical things I started doing that helped me claw my way back. We'll look at simple adjustments to daily life that made a profound difference, things that helped build back my energy, improve my mood, and yes, even sharpen my thinking a bit. If you've ever felt that sense of being stuck, of watching life pass you by, then please stick with me. Watch to the end, because there's something that happened along the way that might just surprise you. My journey back didn't start with some grand plan or a sudden burst of motivation. It started with a quiet desperation and a tiny, almost imperceptible nudge from someone who cared. I remember my daughter visiting one weekend, and she looked at me, really looked at me, and her eyes held so much worry. She didn't say much, just little things like, "Are you sleeping okay, Mom?" Or, "Have you been out for a walk lately?" It was those quiet questions that made me stop and think. No, I wasn't sleeping well at all. I'd lie awake for hours, my mind racing with worries about nothing and everything. Or I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and couldn't get back to sleep. And walking. The most exercise I got was shuffling from the sofa to the kitchen. I told her I was just getting old, that this was how it was supposed to be. But inside, her questions echoed the whispers of my own discontent. I felt a pang of shame, admitting how little I was doing for myself. That conversation was probably the first tiny crack in the wall of my hopelessness. After she left, I found myself sitting alone, feeling the familiar weight of lethargy. But that day, something felt different. Maybe it was her gentle concern, or maybe I was just finally ready to admit that getting old didn't have to mean feeling this way. I decided, in that moment, to try just one thing. Something small. Something I couldn't fail at too easily. And the first thing I decided to tackle was my sleep. It felt fundamental. If I wasn't sleeping, how could I expect to have energy for anything else I started reading? Not complicated medical journals, but simple articles online about sleep hygiene for people our age. The first piece of advice that really stuck with me was consistency. Going to bed and waking up around the same time, even on weekends. This was hard at first. My sleep schedule had been all over the place. Some nights I'd try to go to bed early, only to stare at the ceiling. Other nights, I'd stay up late watching television, hoping exhaustion would finally claim me. I decided to aim for going to bed at 10 p.m. and waking up at 6:30 a.m. The first week was a bit of a struggle. I didn't fall asleep instantly, and I still woke up early sometimes. But I made myself stay in bed until 6:30 even if I wasn't sleeping. I also made sure my bedroom was dark, quiet, and cool. I stopped looking at screens, my phone, the TV, for at least an hour before bed. Instead, I started reading a physical book, something I hadn't done in ages. It was surprising how calming that simple act was. My racing thoughts started to slow down, replaced by the gentle rhythm of the story. Another crucial change I made, related to sleep, was cutting back on caffeine, especially in the afternoon. I used to love my afternoon cup of tea, sometimes even another in the early evening. I didn't think it affected me much, but once I switched to decaf or herbal tea after lunch, I noticed a difference. It wasn't immediate, like flipping a switch, but gradually, I started to feel a sense of tiredness settle in naturally as the evening wore on, rather than feeling wired but exhausted. It felt like my body was starting to remember how to wind down on its own. I also paid attention to my diet in the evenings. Avoiding heavy meals or sugary snacks close to bedtime helped significantly. Instead, if I was a little hungry, I'd have a small handful of nuts or a piece of fruit earlier in the evening. The difference this made to my sleep cycle over a few weeks was remarkable. I wasn't sleeping perfectly every night, but I was falling asleep faster, waking up less often, and when I did wake up, I could usually get back to sleep. More importantly, I started to feel less groggy in the mornings. There was a slight increase in energy, a tiny crack of light in the persistent gray feeling. It wasn't a complete transformation yet, but it was enough to make me think, okay, maybe there's something to this. Sleep felt like the foundation, and slowly, shakily, I was starting to build it back, now that I was getting a little more rest. The next step felt slightly less daunting. I needed to address the physical stagnation, that feeling of being glued to my chair. It wasn't about becoming a marathon runner. It was just about moving my body more. So, armed with my slightly improved sleep, I decided it was time to tackle that. With a little more energy from better sleep, I felt like I could finally attempt the next step. It wasn't going to the gym or anything drastic like that. I knew myself, and I knew if I aimed too high, I'd just get discouraged and give up. My legs felt heavy, my joints creaky, and the thought of any strenuous activity was genuinely off-putting. So, I decided to start incredibly small. I started walking, but not long. Purposeful walks at first. I just started walking around my house more. Instead of shouting to my husband in the next room, I'd get up and walk over. Instead of letting things pile up, I'd make multiple trips to put things away. It sounds silly, but just increasing my movement. Inside. The house was a start. I'd walk around the garden for 5 minutes, just observing the plants. Then, I decided to try walking outside, but with zero pressure. My initial goal was simply to walk to the end of my driveway and back. That was it. Some days, even that felt like a huge effort, and I wouldn't do it. But on the days I did, I felt a small sense of accomplishment. Gradually, very gradually, the driveway and back became walking to the next lamppost, then to the corner. I wasn't timing myself or counting steps religiously. I was just moving, slowly, breathing the fresh air. What surprised me was how much just being outside helped my mood. The sunlight, the sounds of birds, seeing neighbors. It felt like reconnecting with the world outside my four walls. These little walks weren't tiring me out. They were actually giving me more energy. My legs started to feel a little stronger, less heavy. My joints still ached sometimes, but they felt less stiff when I was moving regularly. I made a conscious effort not to push myself too hard. If I felt tired, I'd turn back. The goal was consistency and gentle progress, not speed or distance. This daily movement, even just 10 to 15 minutes, started to make a tangible difference to how I felt physically and mentally. It was like the sleep had given me the foundation, and the gentle movement was starting to build the walls. Around this time, I also started thinking about what I was eating. My diet hadn't been terrible, but it wasn't exactly fueling me either. Lots of convenience foods, not enough fresh stuff. I wasn't going to overhaul everything overnight, but I decided to focus on adding more nutrient-dense foods, especially things known for providing sustained energy and supporting brain health. I started by making sure I had some protein with every meal. Instead of just toast for breakfast, I'd have eggs or Greek yogurt. At lunch, I'd add some leftover chicken or beans to my soup or salad. Protein seemed to help me feel full longer and avoided that energy crash I often felt mid-morning or afternoon. I also started eating more vegetables, trying to include a colorful variety. Roasting a tray of mixed vegetables at the start of the week made it easy to add a spoonful to any meal. I wasn't counting calories or restricting drastically. I was just trying to make slightly better choices, adding the good stuff in. Adding more healthy fats was another area I focused on. Things like avocados, nuts, seeds, and olive oil. I'd sprinkle seeds on my yogurt, add half an avocado to a sandwich, or use olive oil generously in cooking. These fats are important for brain function and overall health, and I felt like they contributed to a more stable energy level throughout the day. I also paid attention to hydration. I realized I wasn't drinking enough water. I started keeping a water bottle with me and sipping throughout the day. It's amazing how much better you feel when you're properly hydrated. Less fatigue, fewer headaches, and just a general sense of being more tuned in. These dietary changes weren't complicated or expensive. They were just about making simple swaps and additions to what I was already eating, combined with the improved sleep and gentle walking. I could genuinely feel a shift happening. The heavy blanket of hopelessness was starting to lift, replaced by glimmers of feeling capable and energized. It wasn't perfect, and I still had bad days. But the good days were becoming more frequent and felt more significant. The progress with sleep, gentle movement, and mindful eating gave me a fragile sense of momentum. It was still easy to slip back into old habits. And some days, the inertia of feeling low was hard to overcome. But I kept reminding myself of how even the small changes were making me feel a little bit better. The next area I decided to explore was how I was using my mind. I felt like my thinking had become sluggish, my focus poor. I used to be quite sharp, but lately, I felt like I was constantly searching for words or losing my train of thought. I read that keeping your brain active is crucial as you age, not just through formal learning, but through engaging in things that challenge you in different ways. I wasn't ready to take a complex course or anything, but I looked for simple ways to engage my brain daily. I started doing crossword puzzles again, something I hadn't touched in years. I also downloaded a few brain training apps on my tablet that had simple memory and logic games. I didn't spend hours on them, just 10-15 minutes a day while I had my morning tea. It felt like I was giving my brain a gentle workout. Another thing that made a surprising difference was simply trying new things, even small ones. I tried a new recipe each week, something slightly outside my comfort zone. I started listening to podcasts on topics I knew nothing about. I even attempted to learn a few phrases in a new language using a free app. It wasn't about becoming fluent or an expert. It was about introducing novelty and challenging my brain to make new connections. This wasn't about preventing memory loss in a scary way, but about actively engaging my cognitive function, keeping things stimulated and alive. I found that the more I used my brain in different ways, the less foggy I felt. It was like waking up parts of my mind that had been dormant. Alongside this, I realized how isolated I had become. When I was feeling hopeless, I'd withdrawn from friends and activities. The thought of social interaction felt draining. But as I started to feel a little better physically and mentally, I realized I missed connection. Again, I started small. I didn't jump back into big social gatherings. I called an old friend I hadn't spoken to in ages. We had a simple chat, nothing deep, just catching up. It felt surprisingly good to hear her voice and share a laugh. Then, I decided to reconnect with a small local group I used to be part of, a book club that met once a month. Going to the first meeting was nerve-wracking, but once I was there, surrounded by friendly faces, I felt a sense of belonging that I hadn't realized I was missing so desperately. It wasn't about having a huge circle of friends. It was about having a few genuine connections, people to talk to, share experiences with, and just feel less alone. Human connection is incredibly powerful, and it played a significant role in lifting my spirits. It reminded me that I was still part of something, that I mattered to other people. Another incredibly simple yet profound change was spending time in nature. I mentioned walking earlier, but this was more intentional. I started visiting a local park just to sit on a bench and observe. I wasn't walking. I was just being still, watching the trees, the birds, the people passing by. It felt incredibly calming. I also started pottering in my little garden more, pulling weeds, watering plants. Getting my hands dirty in the soil felt grounding. Nature has a way of putting things into perspective. It reminds you of continuity, growth, and the simple beauty of the world, even when you're feeling down. It was a gentle form of mindfulness, being present in the moment, noticing the small wonders around me. This simple act of connecting with the natural world felt like nourishment for my soul. It wasn't a habit in the traditional sense, but it became a vital part of my week. A quiet antidote to the feeling of being trapped or overwhelmed. Looking back at that low point at 63, it feels like a different lifetime. The despair was so real, so heavy. It felt like an insurmountable mountain. But the truth is, I didn't climb it in one heroic ascent. I did it by taking one tiny step at a time. It started with trying to sleep a little better, then moving my body a little more, then thinking about the fuel I was putting in. Each small change built on the last, creating a gentle upward spiral. It wasn't about being perfect. There were days I didn't sleep well, days I didn't feel like walking, days I ate things I shouldn't have. But the key was consistency over perfection. If I had a bad day, I'd just try to get back on track the next day without beating myself up about it. It was about progress, not perfection. The combination of better sleep, gentle movement, more nourishing food, keeping my mind engaged, reconnecting with people, and spending time in nature slowly but surely transformed how I felt. The physical aches lessened, the mental fog cleared, and the heavy weight on my chest started to dissipate. I started to feel lighter, more energetic, more engaged with life. I found myself smiling more, laughing more. The world started to look colorful again. Instead of gray, it wasn't just about managing symptoms. It was about rebuilding my life from the ground up, starting with the basics. And the surprise I mentioned at the beginning. The thing that really surprised me wasn't some external reward or a sudden dramatic event. The real surprise was rediscovering myself. I found the person who was hidden under layers of fatigue, inactivity, and low spirits. I found my curiosity again, my ability to find joy in simple things, my resilience. I wasn't the hopeless 63-year-old anymore. I was me, but a stronger, more vibrant, and more appreciative version. It taught me that it's never too late to make changes. And that, often, the most powerful transformations come from the simplest, most consistent actions. If any part of my story resonates with you, if you felt that heavy feeling of hopelessness or just a general lack of energy and joy as you've gotten older, please know you are not alone. And please know that it is possible to feel better. You don't have to do everything at once. Just pick one small thing. Maybe it's drinking an extra glass of water, or walking to the letterbox and back, or calling someone you miss. Just one small step, and then try another. These simple habits, layered on top of each other, can truly change your life. Remember, small changes can make a big difference to your health and happiness, especially as we navigate this stage of life. I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. Have you found simple habits that have made a big difference in your life? Please share them in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If you found this video helpful or encouraging, please give it a like. That tells me I'm creating content that matters to you. And if you want to join our community and get more ideas and inspiration for living your best life at every age, be sure to subscribe to my channel. We're all in this together. Navigating the journey. Supporting each other. Don't let the years ahead feel like a decline. See them as an opportunity for rediscovery, for finding new energy, new joys, and a renewed sense of purpose. Live your best life at every age.